Good afternoon and welcome to the Standing Committee meeting for Monday, November 23rd, 2020. Council will continue to meet virtually until further notice. All meetings will be live streamed on the city's YouTube channel. Our first order of business is public comments. I would like to remind all speakers that the rules of council state that comments are limited to matters of concern, official action, or deliberation, which may or may be before city council, and profanity will not be permitted. Our first speaker,
Will you? And I'll call.
I should have pulled that up.
Dr. Marks. I'll have a conversation.
Our first speaker is sorry, I got muted. Our first speaker is Dixie Timmons.
Just tell me when I start.
Give us your name and neighborhood for the record, and your 3 minutes will begin.
Thank you. Dixie Timmons, Wallingford Street in Pittsburgh. This year, 2020, the White House used the pandemic as a pretext to close the border indefinitely and stop hearing asylum applications. Meanwhile, immigrants within the U.S. faced additional hardships. DACA recipients feared deportation as the Supreme Court considered their status. Immigrant workers have been working hard in fields and factories, many without basic safety measures. And you only have to look as far as our great UPMC to see that many of the workers who have to do the cleanup have had some of their basic safety measures limited and even taken away. We see an exhausted, worn down, endangered medical community who never give up to save us. And we see mercy triumph over selfishness. In a human effort so beautiful, we ache. They put themselves in danger, trying to save whatever families we have, and they shine a light on the essence of humanity so bright, it floods our hearts with new hope for humanity. There is also a more discouraging, breathtaking example of self-centeredness and dispassionate government. We've seen a leadership without a conscience or a care for the human side of modern life. We see well-organized groups shout out their fear of socialism, but all took the bailout checks that came to keep our country propped up. Our capitalism can be cruel in a crunch. When the going got rough, we chose to expose the whole country to the virus so that we could keep making money. And immigrants, people of color, laborers, and small business owners who live from paycheck to paycheck, they have no money stored up to help them endure the enemy that we cannot see. At the government level, mercy and compassion have gone by the wayside, despite the advice of scientists all over the world that we all work, we have decided. So what do? Well, there is hope. And if we see something, we need to say something, and then we all need to do something, because you and I, we need each other. And finding a way forward and doing this work, as you know, is not easy, but it can be fun. And oh, what a joy. Let's do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ikuhana Halmalkina. I do not see the name. Our next speaker would also be Kota Kibe. Whom I also do not see. Therefore, having exhausted our list of registered speakers, we'll move on to our standing committee agenda. And will the clerk please take the roll?
Reverend Burgess. Here.
Mr. Coghill,
Here.
Ms. Gross,
Here.
Mr. Kraus, Mr. O'Connor,
Here.
Mrs. Cal Smith, Ms. Strasburger,
Here.
Mr. Wilson,
Here.
Mr. Lavelle Chair.
Here.
7 members present.
Thank you. Our first committee of the day is Finance and Law, which is chaired by myself. We have a number of new papers. First bill is Bill 899.
Bill 899, resolution authorizing pursuant to Chapter 210 of the City Code, the mayor and director of the Department of Public Works to accept a donation from the Pittsburgh Penguins Foundation of $50,000 for capital investments for the Amman Recreation Center Rec to Tech remodel.
Motion to approve. Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Bill is recommended. Bill 900.
Bill 900, resolution authorizing pursuant to Chapter 210 of the City Code, the mayor and director of the Department of Public Works to accept a donation from the First National Bank Corporation of $50,000 for capital investment for the Amman Recreation Center Rec to Tech remodel.
Motion to approve. Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Bill is recommended. Bill 901.
Bill 901, ordinance amending and supplementing the City Code at Title I, Administrative Article 11, Human Resources, Chapter 198, Campaign Finance Regulations at Section 19801, Definitions, and 19805, Public Database and Reporting.
Motion to approve. Second.
Discussion, please.
Yeah.
All right, there's an amendment to this bill that should be before members.
No, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry, it is.
Okay, can we have a motion to amend and then we'll go through the whole bill?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 All right, now on the bill as amended, we do have Miss Leanne Davis here with us today.
Mr. Chair, if you would, just can someone tell me like where to find the email with the amendment? Who did, like which person did it come from? I haven't pulled it up yet on my screen.
The clerk mailed it out.
I'll
With the
use that
agenda.
for you again. So
Thank you, I
it'll be on
appreciate
top.
it.
Not a problem.
And Miss Davis. Oh, there we go. So, well, I saw her come off of mute. So, Miss Davis, if you're with us, if you could give us a brief walkthrough of the bill.
Yes.
There
Oh,
we go.
hello. Thank you. So this proposed legislation does not affect anything that's already existing. It only adds a few new provisions. It adds a definition for independent expenditures, as well as 3 new sections, 19805 subsection 3, 4, and 5. 3 covers political committees, 4 covers individuals, and 5 enables the board to conduct audits of campaign finance reports. And in terms of the goals here, we're just really seeking to make sure that we can obtain transparency and disclosures from all money that's being spent in our local elections for candidate campaigns as well as ballot initiatives. And that's here with these provisions, we're seeking to capture independent expenditures, and some people call those non-coordinated campaigns. So it's not to impose any extra burden on donations to candidates, but an independent campaign. So If an individual or a dark money or other political committee group came into our town and wanted to spend money, we'd be able to capture that spending.
Thank you. Is there discussion from members? Councilman Coghill.
Okay. Hi, Leanne. Good seeing you again. It was a nice conversation we had the other day. And I will say this, Leanne, you know, I've long been critical of your department, and we kind of went over, you know, those things the other day, past, before you come along. I welcome the change with you. I felt one important thing that we went over was that you will now require an initiative. Say, I'm going to use the parks tax, for example, okay? The political campaign that was, you know, driven by politicians, really, they will now have to report just like a candidate does, right? Expenditures, everything.
That's correct. And under subsection 3, political committees, which is defined to be basically a group of people, or it could be some outside entity as well. They would have to report the same form that candidate committees fill out currently. So if there's a group, organization, a political committee that is banded together to have a political campaign in support of a ballot initiative, we would be requiring disclosures for that campaign finance activity, the same as we do for our candidates. One of the nice things about our current campaign finance law is that we require these disclosures a few months before it's required at the county level, which allows for the residents of the city of Pittsburgh to know what interests could be behind a particular candidate or issue well before they make up their mind as to how to vote on that particular issue. Whereas the county, it's only required about a week before the election. And by it, I mean the campaign finance reporting.
No, that is a welcome change. You know, I would say, again, using the parks tax as an example, I felt that all should have been reported. You know, it was a political campaign, you know, so political professionals were hired. So I think that's great. So I'm glad that that's the case. Now, the other thing was, of course, the reporting. I know you require 3 separate reports, which, you know, during an election is like, oh. But anyway, at any rate, you were, and the biggest problem for me, you were not coordinated with the city. You were not, and the city wasn't, when I say the city, I mean Controller Lamb's office, and he was not coordinating with the county, and you all had different dates. So we were really looking at like 8 different reports through a cycle. So if I write 3 checks during the time between your due date and county's due date, just like what a hassle. So you are able to now coordinate with the counties.
Right.
So we can just get a Xerox copy and, you know, send it off to you, same report, right?
That's correct. For, like I said, the county only requires it about a week before the election. But for that particular, so there'd be the filing in May and November for the primary and general election. For those particular reports that are due with the county, you can just do a Xerox copy of it. It's going to be the same reporting period. And all that's going to be up on our website coming soon to make it really clear for everyone to, yeah. And I'm definitely open to feedback if there's other things that we can do. I've heard some suggestions that it might be easier if we expanded our reporting period for the initial filing to begin the day after the general election. Others like it better that we have it start at January 1st. So please, the more feedback I can get, the more I can help align and make it as efficient and easy for everybody. Yeah.
January 1st for me, put me in that column. Okay.
Okay.
So, and the other thing was, you know, we talked about, you know, kind of trying to track or trying to make sure people are transparent as to where this, you know, sometimes what I think we refer to as like dark money coming into elections, local elections, so, which is very disturbing. I don't have that problem, I could tell you. So that all sounds great, and I'm all for transparency, as long as it doesn't provide more work for the candidate, because I do believe with 5 or 6 or 8 different reports and the layers of things that a candidate has to do, it really restricts an average person who doesn't have people that we pay and we know to take care of all these things. I myself I'd never make the primary, so just be careful as to going forward. I want to make sure this doesn't require more work on the candidate's end. The 3 reports, I got it. The second one synchronized, perfect. And January 1st date, all good with me. So, okay, Ian, that's it for me. I'm sorry, I don't want to take up too much time. Thanks.
Oh, sure, no problem. Yeah, just to reiterate, this would not impose any additional burdens on candidates or their committees, or to people donating to a candidate or their committee, whether an individual or a political committee. Those will both be excluded from these forms. It's just someone who's doing their own individual independent campaign. Another thing I'm hoping to do is to create like a web form so folks can kind of just very easily fill out these campaign finance forms online and upload a spreadsheet of their expenditures or contributions to make it easier for everybody. That's still in the works right now, but
I had an opponent running against me. I think it was 4 years ago or 3 years ago now. So just want to let you know, he was hit with fine after fine after fine, for when he's late, I guess, for filing date. He went out and he had to get an attorney, and, just the chaos that ensues when we throw that fine on people. And no less than, the former Councilwoman Darlene Harris, I know took issue with that as well. So, okay. Thanks, Leanne.
Thank you. Councilwoman Gross.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Leanne, for being here. Similarly, I think it's interesting for both situations, right? We don't want to have these hoops to jump through and time resources or dollar resources that really discourage or defeat candidates alone, right? So also you have situations, and I don't know if they're relevant to our reporting requirements or not, where people challenge a candidate's eligibility based on some of these things. So we don't want to be guilty of, at the cost of transparency, right? We're in pursuing transparency, but really putting these barriers up to people who just don't have the resources to comply with the requirements we're putting in place. And I just wanted to emphasize that and try to say that in my own words, to make the public understand the reason we want to grapple with this, because I don't want the public to just think that we're against transparency. We're not against transparency, but it has played out badly when you are putting up a ridiculous amount of requirements that your general person can't run for office because they can't comply with all of the burden that is put up. So that's why we want to be slow and deliberative. And I appreciate your office that we've tasked with our city council legislation with complying with this transparency ordinance, trying to figure out a way where we can have the transparency but not the barriers. And then also on the flip side, what I'm understanding here is that I don't think in the whole time that we were debating the Parks Conservancy's paying $1 million for a ballot initiative, I don't think I ever thought of it as dark money. But that's exactly what you're talking about here, isn't it? I mean, how do you define dark money?
So actually, I have an answer for you on that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, dark money groups are so-called dark money because you don't know who the donors are. There's no disclosure or transparency about that. And this is a national trend that's happening across the country. And I don't know if I'd really look at the Parks Conservancy as an example of that, because what we've seen nationally happen is there's these different campaigns where usually it's like a direct mailer or a TV ad, and it's paid for, and it's by groups that you don't know who's behind them. I can give you a couple anecdotes if you want, but
Yeah, I would, I mean, because it just is not something we've been thinking about for the local, at the local level, right? You think about it
Right.
for state races, state legislation, definitely federal. So yeah, if you have examples, that'd be helpful, I think.
Sure. So there's a movie on Amazon Prime. If anyone is a, a subscriber, you could watch it for free, called Dark Money. And it kind of goes through this. So 501c4 and 501c6 nonprofits, under the IRS regulations that were passed under the Trump administration, no longer have to disclose who their donors are, which is different than other nonprofit organizations. So when those groups give money to a political campaign, there's no way of finding out who's behind them. However, for the 501c4, it's supposed to be considered a social welfare group. Another example of a 501c4 is the NRA, Planned Parenthood, different groups like that, that people feel strongly one way or another about them. And in Montana, in that movie, it documents there was a mailer that came out, and it said, this political candidate is basically aligned with child molesters. I don't know if they really called the person a child molester, but they said they support them. And it said it was paid for by like Mothers Against Child Molesters. And that's what you saw. And they were able to expose that the mailer was actually paid for by the Koch brothers, who had an interest in a mine within the district that was polluting. And the particular candidate who the mailer came out against was in support of cleaning up the mine. So there's several instances like that. There's also an instance very recently in Ohio where the representative householder was affiliated, it was receiving dark money groups, and it was linked to a lot of corruption, to deceptive practices in terms of a ballot initiative where they had passed legislation to force the public to pay for this bailout, a public bailout of this nuclear power plant. And so he's been criminally charged with several corruption counts related to this dark money organization. So when we have been able to pierce the veil as a society into some of these things, we're seeing some bad things that are happening. The more transparency that we can have into our democratic process, the better. There was a study from a comparable ethics organization out of California where they were able to tie public engagement with racial and income equity and improved equity when you have improved participation of the public. So whatever information we can have, whatever transparency we can have as to the interest behind a particular political campaign, no longer, it's not only good just for the candidates involved, so you can like know who's attacking you, but also for the citizens, right? You know, we need to know like what interests are supporting or dissuading us from a particular candidate or issue.
Thank you. Those were very illustrative examples. I'm having trouble, like I'm scrolling through the amendment on the screen and trying to process it at the same time we're talking. And it says that whereas the Ethics Hearing Board desires to forward these goals through accounting for independent expenditures, expanding this accounting to include campaigns involving ballot questions, and mandating an audit procedure. So that was a whereas statement. And now I'm scrolling through the text and I'm trying to figure out where the auditing part comes in, and I'm not finding it.
That's 198.05 subsection 5.
198.05?
Yeah, and
subsection 5,
then-
which is new. It's new in the amendment here. Section 5, campaign finance reports will be regularly audited according to regulations promulgated by the Ethics Hearing Board. So, okay. So in the examples you just explained to me, where there was a dark money funding of a ballot initiative in Ohio, I think you said, if they had this ordinance, you would see the donors to the PAC that the 501c6 or the 501c4 had formed.
Unfortunately, no.
No.
We wouldn't be able to do that. However, we'd be able to know that the spending is existing and occurring to be able to track it,
Okay.
so that if there is some change in the future, that we can kind of focus our efforts there. Right now, under Citizens United, these groups can spend as much as they want. And the IRS regulations, obviously, we wouldn't be able to impact that right now. But hopefully, with a, that's something that changed under the Trump administration. Perhaps it could be reversed under a Biden administration, where we could get that transparency again.
Yeah, so, okay, so when we've had ballot initiatives this year, I don't think there was a PAC filed that spent money around the amendment to the Home Rule Charter around the CPRB. But a year ago, when we had the ballot initiative for the tax referendum to amend the Home Rule Charter to put in the dedicated funding for parks, there was a PAC. And so did they comply with the legislation as it stood before this amendment? So they did file
Yes.
reports?
That's correct, because our legislation before only asked for reports from candidates and their committees.
Okay, so they
And-
didn't file, okay, but if
Right.
we pass this, then they would have to, we could prevent, or we would be requiring a group that is spending money on messaging around any kind of election language, whether it's a candidate or ballot,
Correct.
would be filing the same reports that we all have filed when we ran.
Exactly.
So what I remember asking the Parks Conservancy about their PAC, they did have a PAC,
Mhm.
because probably as a 501c4, they're actually or C3, they're prohibited under federal 501c3 regulations from electioneering. It doesn't say in the federal code supporting candidates, it says electioneering, which I find, to my reading, would be a rubric term that would include both ballot initiatives or candidates. And so they did have a PAC. So let's say it was this year or the next, it would say it was next year and they'd formed the PAC, they would have to file reports. But they funded their PAC with, like, I think they told me, someone correct me if I'm wrong, they wrote like a $700,000 check from their nonprofit to this PAC. So you'd have to just look at all of their donors under their, what is that, 990? Where they disclose their donors from the previous tax year to the IRS. Right? I mean, so we really actually wouldn't know anything more than who had formed the PAC, I guess, with this amendment. How much will we know?
In that example, I think that you would be correct, that we would be able to see earlier in time how much money was being spent there. I recall there was also a TV advertisement. So I'm not sure if that was paid for by them or if it was paid for by a different group. But yeah, a political committee defined as any group of people. That's also within the legislation is on there.
Nice. Okay, so
So
you
was
just,
other
let's say
group-
you're sitting at home and you, Leanne, see the TV ad. You can say, like, I need to know who's running that ad, if it's relevant to anything on a City of Pittsburgh ballot.
Yeah, I think so. I think I envision that maybe, we could get citizens to, the different constituents to go to our website and upload, here's a picture of the mailer I got, where is it from? And we can do a little bit of due diligence to try to help people understand that. There's an example of a particular mailer. I don't know if everybody's gotten it here, but the director of the Office of Open Records for Pennsylvania got it. And it says, your voting record is public record. And within the mailer, it actually names a couple of residents on their street. And so it says, we're going to tell John Doe to vote in this election. And it's, it's kind of threatening. It's kind of harassing.
I got one of those. I think I got 2 of them.
Yeah.
And I think I did put it aside and was like, whoa, I should find out what this is about. And I don't think I've actually done that. So,
well, how cool would it be if you could just go to our city website, upload your picture of that one, ask us about it, and then we could just do a real quick search of the organization that paid for it. And the particular one from the director of the Office of Open Records here in Pennsylvania was actually paid for by a partisan group. And all their spending went to this partisan group. So the expectation is that you can create a targeted political outcome with this kind of messaging, because you're only sending it to people who you feel would be aligned with your views, whether it's a political party or a special interest group. And there's been studies to show that sort of a targeted advertisement does increase the outcome that you're likely to vote.
This is really fascinating. So this has been, I think, something that I'm glad you've responded with this amendment, because it was really the substance of a lot of emails I got at my office. We talked about them, it seems like a decade ago now, because it was before lockdown. But we just had public hearings and post agendas about the Parks Conservancy at the beginning of 2020. And I had a lot of substance from constituents saying like, what is Google going to buy a ballot? Anyone can amend our home rule charter if they've got $1 million in their pocket. Like, who's going to do it next? Where's the end? Like, this is creating, we're going to have these cycles, right? Are we going to have like 15 home rule amendments all purchased by deep pockets on our ballots, right? Every year. So what is this like? There was real citizen concern about like a slippery slope.
Oh, definitely. I would agree with that. I feel like we need to make sure. I think the first step is just being able to track where the money's coming from and knowing, what interests are supporting some of these measures for sure. And there's been studies in New York and California where they have a different campaign finance system where they can have a publicly funded campaigns. And they found, like, for example, in New York City, they have a local election, and within the New York City campaign finance law, they have public financing. So every person gets a certain amount of money that they can give to a particular candidate. And because of that extra public engagement, it's just people are more engaged, they vote.
Wow. What if we had to do that for at least even just ballot initiatives?
Yeah. And then the same
would be fascinating.
For a statewide race, they're not showing up because so they're able to show the studies that having some of those components, Pennsylvania probably won't have a public campaign finance system anytime soon, but it's one of the solutions to this concern.
Thank you for bringing that up.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how other members feel. I still feel like I didn't read this very carefully myself, and I'm wondering if we want to hold it for a little bit, or if other members have already been briefed on it and everything. I see it looks like Councilman Kraus is ready to vote, but I'm not sure what the other discussion is. But I do thank you for bringing it forward. I haven't seen, we're kind of at the holidays and the end of the year, so I haven't had a lot of feedback from the public or seen a lot of public discussion, but I'll stop my questions there and see if any other members have questions. Thank you, Leanne.
Sure,
Thank you. Councilwoman Strasburger.
Thank you. And thank you, Leanne, for the briefing earlier this week, or I guess last week, because today's Monday. And I just wanted to bring up that a couple of observations, one question. One is that in states that have really robust statewide referenda processes, I think that's where you see the bulk of, dark money coming from other states and campaigns around these ballot initiatives that are not just at the city level, but they're statewide. I mean, I look at California, and every election, there's like 30 ballot initiatives that people have to sift through and figure out, and they need, help figuring out what the language actually means. And oftentimes it's funded by an initiative from out of state or a national organization similar to the Koch brothers, but maybe different from them. And, they're really just trying to influence voters and almost tricking them into thinking that the ballot initiative language is one thing when it really means another thing. So I don't see that happening here in Pittsburgh. I haven't seen it yet, but anything's possible, I suppose, if someone sees an opening or an organization sees an opening for making piecemeal change at the local municipal level. So that's just one observation and something that I'm glad that we're tackling here. A second, I used to work for an organization that had a 501c3 and a 501c4. And the 501c4, and I guess the PAC that we then spun off allowed us to run these independent expenditure campaigns, also called non-coordinated campaigns. And with that, we had to be very, very strict about not ever talking to the candidate or anyone affiliated with the candidate's campaign. Like, we were very strict because under federal law, that's what was required. We couldn't communicate with them after a certain point. We couldn't even say hello to them. So on the local level, is there a mechanism aside from someone reporting it to be able to enforce this aspect of it? And is that going to be like aligned with the timelines around the federal cutoff dates for communication with coordinated campaigns?
So when I think about the communications or the sort of wall between an independent expenditure group, political committee, and the candidate's campaign, where, in order for it to be an independent expenditure, it can't be coordinated, right? When I think about that, I only think about that in terms of the contribution limitations and spending limitations that are put on the candidates, because otherwise it would be considered a contribution if it was coordinated, right? And so if a political committee wants to give, I think we tie our contribution limitations within Chapter 198 to the FEC. And I think it's like $5,000 right now is the limit a political committee can donate to a candidate. So they could give the $5,000 to a candidate and then go do their own independent campaign where they could spend an unlimited amount of money after Citizens United. So when I think about like the rules of communications and things like that, I think that's the only thing that it's applicable to in our particular city code. And as for reporting, again, what we've seen on a national trend is for these direct mailers or advertisements to be pretty like harassing, threatening, misleading. And so I think that they would draw attention to themselves. And again, we're hoping that would be, brought to our attention. It's a small office that we have here for the ethics office. And right now we currently have a vacancy if anyone's looking for a job. We're hiring an investigator who could like help with these great projects. But we're not going to be going door to door, like sifting through people's mail to see what they're getting. I think that, by the very nature of what's happening nationwide, it would be brought to our attention.
Okay, that's helpful as a framework for thinking about this. Thanks so much.
Sure, yeah.
Thank you. Any other members? Councilman, second round, Councilman Coghill.
Okay, thank you. I'll be quick. Two things, Leanne. I think Councilwoman Gross brings up the bigger question is, where is it going to stop? You know, when you put wherever the money comes from to put an initiative on the ballot. And beyond that, once that question is on the ballot, oftentimes it's blurry. There's not a concerted effort to put out the message as to what it exactly means to the people.
Mm.
For instance, the one with the CPRB just recently, 90% of the people, I did my own little quiz, 90% of the people had no clue as to what that really, consisted of, whether you agree with it or not. They just had no clue. But the language to me said, oh, well, this is like, here's what it was. The police have the opportunity. When people read that, it's a play on words. So it's who puts that message on that ballot and how that is constructed. So anyway, that's the bigger picture. And that really is going to be a concern moving forward, I believe, especially when there's success and they see success and, breeds, others to come. The other thing, Leanne, is I just want to make sure you're very careful not to be used as a political football in your own right. Okay. For instance, if somebody called you and said, hey, check out Cog Hill's campaign finance report, and somebody that gave my report some money that somehow was a child molester, say, for instance, like you brought up before, I don't know how you will do that. Politics kind of plays in everything and it gets in everywhere. For you to say, well, I'm not going to look into that because I know, the opponent of this person is the one putting me up to it. And then it gives everybody free ammunition now to say, oh, look who gave Cog Hill money. That person is tied in with whatever. So that scares me, I will say, in the way of, and even if you're not being used as a political football, people are going to insinuate and you're going to be accused of doing so. So that's all. And if you want to comment, please.
Thank you, Councilman. Any discussion? Any further members? Second round, Councilwoman Smith hasn't gone, then we'll go to Councilman Gross.
I don't have anything. Sorry.
Oh, I thought I saw your hand. Sorry.
Yeah,
Councilwoman
I was
Gross?
trying to touch my microphone.
Oh.
Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just looking that even in Cleveland, I just Googled a little bit after my confusion, right? So yeah, Leanne, I thought gave us some examples in Ohio of dark money already being active in local government. And so even in Cleveland, there was dark money in a school board tax initiative. So Cleveland schools ballot initiatives have had dark money, and it was part of the impetus for the statewide dark money reform, right? And so that's pretty close to home. It's just 2 hours away, right? Is it 2.5?
Yeah.
That we have had a significant money dumped into a local issue from outside. So I think that it's prudent for us to not assume that we're somehow immune, or that we don't have any other kind of protective shield, right? If dark money can enter into like Cleveland school district issues, dark money could easily show up in Pittsburgh local issues. So I'm glad that we're having this conversation, and again, we'll just see how it works. Again, we don't want to raise the bar too high for candidates, but then maybe the bar isn't high enough for the ballot campaigns, right? Is what we're kind of saying, right? So at least now let's have some transparency. But the discussion at the table here is one of the reasons I'm jumping in for second round is that we didn't talk in first round, that I didn't bring up, that we have a campaign finance limit as people running for office in this same part of the code. But there isn't a limit for the dark money or for the ballot or groups. Like you said, they can even be loosely just groups of citizens, right? And so like, you know, could the Parks Conservancy have written Mr. Coghill a $700,000 check for his campaign?
No, they could write
No.
him a check for $5,000 and then spend $655 on their own.
In fact, they couldn't, they'd actually be sued in federal law if they did, I think, because they have a federal tax exempt status as 501c3.
Oh, right, okay.
Right? But but they seem like they can write a check to a PAC for a ballot initiative. Again, I'm not a federal law expert, but that seems like they did that. But yeah, so maybe a discussion for another day. Why would we allow groups kind of do like like you could be an individual solely funding one of these things if there's no campaign limit, right? So it's really vulnerable that way to really not a democratic resources, right? And that's what you were getting at with the kind of public funding, I think, of as the balance, the public policy balance to that would be campaign contribution restrictions on ballot initiatives, as I'm suggesting, and then, as an idea. And then you're suggesting also that there be maybe some public financing, which means that everybody gets the same base amount, so that at least they're not running on zero. I remember Councilman Coghill and I saying that last year a lot, like there was $1 million on one side of a ballot and zero expenditures on the opposite side of the ballot discussion. So I think there's a lot here to chew on that it just raised for me in looking at this first step. So I'm definitely supportive of this first step, and I understand if council members want to vote this through today, but it is bringing up a lot of other related issues, I think. That's all, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to add that in. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other members? If not, real quick, you mentioned the limits for PACs are 5,000 and the individual limits are?
And this isn't being changed. Again, like we're just proposing, the board is just proposing 3 new substantive sections in the definition for independent expenditure. But I think it's 198.01 on contribution spending. And within that, that part of the bill that was from like 2015, I think, when it was first introduced, I think there's language in there that ties the contribution to the Federal Elections Commission for what their limits are. And I think the last time I saw, it said that if you're a PAC, you can give $5,000 to a candidate.
And what's the individual?
Individual, I think might be like 250 or 500, something. I had to look it up.
Okay.
One of the things I want to put on our website.
Councilman,
easy access to it.
For individual, I believe, $2,800.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it could be something.
Okay. I thought it was 27. Just curious.
2,800.
It was 27, just like increased last year.
Yeah.
Got it.
It's missing 0. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Okay.
All right. Seeing no further speakers, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Bill is recommended. Thank you for being with us, Ms. Davis. That takes us to Bill 902.
Bill 902, resolution authorizing the mayor and director of the Office of Management and Budget on behalf of the city are hereby authorized to enter into a grant agreement with Allegheny County for the receipt of coronavirus relief funds in the amount of $50,000 for the Bureau of Emergency Medical Services and Fire. These grant funds shall be used to reimburse eligible city expenditures related to the COVID-19 response as set by county and federal guidelines.
Motion to approve. Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Bill is recommended. That takes us to invoices. We do have invoices for approval. Need a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Abstain. Abstain.
Oh, any opposed? Any abstentions? Councilwoman Smith and Coghill abstained. Okay. Invoices are approved. That takes us to our intra-departmental transfers, which we need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? The transfers are approved. We also have P cards for approval today. Need a motion on the P cards.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? P cards are approved. That takes us to Public Safety Services Committee, which is chaired by Mr. O'Connor. We have one new paper, Bill 903.
Bill 903, resolution amending resolution number 765 of 2016, which authorized the mayor and director of the Department of Public Safety to enter into a 5-year professional services agreement with one or more leaders for the continued implementation of the city's spay and neuter in order to increase the not to exceed cost of $40,000.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Bill is recommended. That takes us to our Public Works Committee, which is chaired by Mr. Coghill. One supplemental paper, Bill 925.
Bill 925, resolution further amending resolution number 795 of 2015 as amended, entitled Resolution Authorizing the Mayor and Directors of the Department of Public Works, Office of Management and Budget, Finance, and Parks and Recreation to enter into a lease agreement with CRJRS Chip, doing business as the First Tee of Pittsburgh at the Bob O'Connor Golf Course at Shinley Park, in order to add an additional $362,531 of funding to the lease authorization.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Councilwoman Gross?
Thank you. I appreciate it. I have the full text of the legislation open. I'm wondering if someone can explain to me what is happening here. When it says that the dollar amount is being increased, are we putting more city dollars?
Yeah, I can explain, Councilwoman. Sorry, I'm not on video. So what happened, we have a 20-year lease agreement, and the First Tee of Pittsburgh received grant funding for the project through not only Alcosan, but a couple other grants. And this has to come through us to pay for a portion of work in the city right away when it comes to the sidewalks, as well as repaving the parking garage or parking lot.
Okay, so this is about sorry. It says it's in the lease terms.
Yeah, we have to amend the lease agreement. The lease agreement that was signed only called for this organization to receive, I believe, about $42,000 this year. But this money could not be collected by them, so we are the pass-through, which is why the lease agreement goes up to $300,000 for this year, and then it would take the usual expense of $40,000 for the remaining years of the agreement.
Okay, good. So we're
basically
passing through grants from other bodies,
Yes, exactly.
not just adding city operating dollars in it. I'm glad to hear that. I appreciate you clarifying that. I think that's an important distinction, given that this group has a lease on public property for the operating of it. And there's, of course, it's been rebuilt and all that kind of stuff. I didn't want to see that it was a substantial change of the terms of the lease. We're really just adding using our capacity to receive and put those funds into the project.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm supportive. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Bill is recommended. That takes us to Land Use and Economic Development Committee, which is chaired by Mr. Wilson. We have a recommitted bill, Bill 776.
Bill 776, resolution providing for the designation as a historic structure under Title 11 of the Code of Ordinances, that certain structure known as St. John Vianney Church, located at 225 Allen Street in Allen, 18th Ward.
Motion to hold 1 week.
Second.
That motion's out of order, I'm sorry, but point of order, that motion's out of order.
No, it isn't.
Yeah, it is.
Motion to hold 1 week, second, no discussion.
Mr. Chair, point of order.
I'm not aware of a 1 week hold. I think we're supposed to hold it for an executive session, but.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
There's been no clear guidance from law as to how to move from this time forward. So,
Councilman Kraus, if I may, law did send over a memo advising us of two motions that were appropriate. One was a motion to hold, but you would also hold it for an executive session.
I'm looking for this now.
You should have got it at 126. What was recommended was a motion to hold until such time that the council is permitted to take action.
Yeah, I didn't get anything on 126.
Yeah, I'm seeing it now.
Mr. Chair? Mr. Chair?
It's frozen.
Jesus.
Mr. Chair?
I think
he's frozen.
Chairman Lavelle is frozen.
I'm sorry, there are really two motions. Only two motions are appropriate.
Mr. Burgess, the chair didn't give you the floor.
He's not here to give me the floor.
Right, so we're all waiting.
No, when he doesn't
We're
have
all
the floor,
waiting.
not actually, when he doesn't have the floor, Councilman, President Smith has the floor, is
All
the
right,
chair.
but she didn't give you the floor either.
I simply asked.
Let me just check with Councilman.
I still don't. I've lost the email now. Somehow I've lost it. Madam Clerk, can you resend this to members, please?
I just did. I just sent it to
Oh, I see.
everybody
Thank you.
again.
Okay.
Yes.
Motion to hold until such time as for take action. I disagree with that motion in that I thought that's what the temporary injunction was to determine. I would argue that the proper motion then would be to hold for executive session.
I'm going to chair the meeting until Councilman Lavelle gets back on. So I'm going to say, can we have the law department come and advise us?
Yeah, they're on.
Okay, please.
Madam Chair, this is Anthony Byland, Assistant Solicitor for the Law Department.
Hi, could you tell us what the correct motion should be here?
So there were two options on a motion. There was to essentially, and you know, the text of the motions are in that email, but there was a motion to, let me pull up the text, but there was a motion to hold pending until council would be able to act, essentially pursuant to the lawsuit. But if council has further questions or inquiries about that particular motion, we advised in the alternative, council could hold for an executive session until we could advise you more thoroughly about that first motion if you have questions about it.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
can I ask the law department a question?
yes, go ahead, Councilman.
Mr. Attorney, I believe, as I told the clerk earlier, that one of the proper motions is a motion to hold pending further order of the court. Is that right?
Not not trying to be evasive, but I think that sort of conversation should be held within an executive session to avoid waiving privilege of counsel.
So I guess, but we have to make a motion today. My question is, I think the two proper motions, which as I read your thing, one is to hold for executive session to have this conversation, or to hold pending further order of the court. Either one of those will do it. No other motion is appropriate. That's my sense of it.
Yeah, the advice given would be to essentially, if counsel would be comfortable with the first of the options, which is holding, essentially holding pending the ability to act pursuant to this lawsuit. If they were comfortable with that off the bat, you could do that. But if you do have further questions, which it sounds like members of council do, then the course of action would be to hold for an executive session.
That would be correct. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Sure.
So, Madam Chair.
Ask Councilman Kraus.
Thank you very much. So I would offer to Councilman Wilson to withdraw the motion to hold 1 week. I would withdraw the second. The councilman would then make a motion to hold for executive session, and I would second that motion.
Motion to withdraw my motion for 1 week. Yeah.
And I withdraw my second and second the motion to, go ahead, Councilman, I'm sorry.
Well, so move.
To hold one, or to hold for
executive session.
And I'll second it.
Second,
Thanks for your help.
Thank you, everyone. All in favor? Oh, Dan Lavell's, thank God. So,
Are we
all in
voting?
favor? Discussion?
Aye.
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 Is there any discussion on this or no discussion on this, Madam Clerk? No.
We just voted.
Okay, we'll just make sure. Okay. Okay, so that's it. Councilman
Yes,
Lavelle.
I'm glad, I am proud that council is acting responsibly.
Out of order.
Councilman Gross. Councilman Lavelle, are you back on?
Yes, I'm back on. I apologize. It appeared my Wi-Fi and the whole house went down. So,
Oh,
so that'll move us on to Urban Recreation Committee, chaired by Councilman Burgess. One new paper, Bill 898.
Bill 898, resolution authorizing the mayor and director of the Department of Parks and Recreation to execute relevant agreement to receive grant funding from the Digital Harbor Foundation by way of the National Science Foundation to participate in a multi-city effort to improve technology and technology-related educational programming. This grant will support the city's Rec to Tech initiative and will focus on building curriculum and tech improvements at 2 city recreation centers over 3 years. This resolution further provides for an agreement and expenditures not to exceed $345,182.
Motion to approve.
Second. Any discussion?
Councilman Gross, can I talk now? Ms. Lavelle, can I talk now?
Yes.
Okay, but I just want to make sure I'm not out of order.
Save it. Please.
Councilman
Pardon
Burgess
me?
has the floor.
Pardon me, Mr. Kraus?
Councilman Burgess has the floor. Go ahead, Councilman.
I'm willing to do an interrogative. Do you have something to say, Mr. Kraus? If you do, we can certainly have a robust conversation.
I certainly can.
Gentlemen, let's get back on with the meeting, please.
I'm just asking. I'm not, if they have side comments, we can have that conversation. If not, again, I am proud for council to be acting.
Can we save the patronization of members, please?
Councilman Burgess.
And discuss the bill that's on the table.
Councilman Kraus, Councilman Burgess has the floor.
Enough of the patronization of members. There's a bill on the floor. Can we hold comment to the bill?
So since you're not the boss of me today, tomorrow, or next week, you don't get to pick what I say, when I say it, or how I say it. So I am glad the council finally is acting responsibly, at least most of the members. And so I am looking forward to having ongoing conversations on all bills, because that is my role and responsibility as a member of council. And so for this particular piece of legislation, I urge council's approval.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Bill is recommended. That takes us to Innovation, Performance, and Asset Management Committee, chaired by Mrs. Strasburger. We have a couple new papers, Bill 904.
Bill 904, resolution authorizing the mayor and director of the Department of Innovation and Performance to enter into a fellowship participation agreement with Coro Pittsburgh.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none.
Could you
all those
just tell us what it is? I'm sorry. Could you tell us what it is?
It's my understanding that we have some leftover funds that will be applied in a particular budget that will be applied for hiring a Coro fellow. But I see that we have Heidi Norman here to answer any additional questions.
Thank you, Councilman. That's okay. I'm good. Thank you.
Any further discussion from members? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Bill is recommended. Bill 905.
Bill 905, resolution amending Resolution 348 of 2020, which authorized the mayor and director of the Department of Innovation and Performance to enter into a 3-year contract with Essery, granting uncapped citywide access to Essery's products for all departments by amending the not to exceed amount to include data migration by $300,000.
Motion to approve. Brief discussion.
Second.
Discussion, Councilman Strasburger.
Yes, so this bill is necessary to support our GIS system that has not traditionally been built for citywide use. So just as an example, 311 needs new servers, but the migration of all this information to the cloud will be less costly and easier to manage with the software. So with migrating this to the cloud. So we do have, I don't know, Heidi, if this is you or if this is someone else from INP here to answer questions if there are any.
I would invite our Senior Manager of Applications, Shireen Abdelsami, to answer any specific questions that the council may have.
Yes, I'm here to answer any questions.
Are you done, Councilman Strasburger?
I am.
Okay, thank you. Councilwoman Gross?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll never skip an opportunity to talk a little bit about GIS systems. So I really appreciate you being here, Ms. Norman and Ms. Abdul Sami. Thank you. So I've noticed that we don't actually use all the geographic information that we can for analyses. If you want to just take a minute to help us and help the public understand, for example, is this across the new digital platforms that we have for online permitting? Is it, how are we kind of, I assume this will empower us to synthesize information that are existing on different platforms, right? Because we know the pinpoint locations, whether it's a 311 call or it's a PLI initiative or it's this kind of stuff. So I'm very excited because, I do this in pencil in my office for sinkholes and potholes and landslides. So thank you. I'll give you the floor.
Sure. So the current system right now, as it's standing today, was built actually for the GIS division in city planning. Since we moved to INP, the GIS system had been broadly used by all city employees, and actually we are reaching out to the public as well as community engagement applications. So we found that hosting the system or rebuilding the entire system in-house on prem servers are going to be very costly. So we decided to move them to the cloud. We split pretty much the product or the project into two sections. First of all, we had to purchase all of the licenses that are needed by city employees to perform their work. And second is rebuilding the entire system because it pretty much ended its end of life. So this is the second portion of the project. we need to do integration. We discovered that there is no integration with other systems. Everything is done manually at the time being. So this is the next step, is to do the integration with PGH One Stop, with Impact for Finance, with QSend for the 311 system, and Cartograph for the asset management.
So asset management would also help coordinate with the various authorities like Alcosan and PwC that have also conduct business and have assets basically in our footprint.
Correct, yes.
Yeah, so, and it really, once you've got it on a platform where people can upload their data, there's no other expenditures for outside, there's no barriers to merging your data, basically, right? So while I'm usually critical and want to, question big technology contracts to make sure that we have bells and whistles, there's no extraneous bells or whistles here. Like we should have done this 10 years ago. And we certainly should have done it 5 years ago. So I am really excited to see this capacity added, because it's just going to remove a bunch of obstacles that we've kind of had for no good reason between different departments trying to apply their regulatory authority to the same piece of ground, basically, or the same crisis that's happening in the same neighborhood, that kind of thing. So that's, I thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm really enthusiastically supporting this bill. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion from members? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Bill is recommended. That takes us to Bill 907.
I have Bill 906.
Oh, I skipped one. I apologize. Bill 906.
Bill 906, resolution authorizing the mayor and director of the Department of Innovation and Performance to enter into a professional services agreement with a ERP One Consultant Inc. for a term of 3 years plus 2 one-year options for the provision of day-to-day managed services of the City of Pittsburgh's J.D. Edwards Enterprise 9.2 application, currently managed by the Allegheny County Service Center at a sum not to exceed $650,000 over 5 years.
Motion to hold 1 week.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Bill will be held 1 week. Now, Bill 907.
Bill 907, resolution authorizing the director of the Department of Innovation and Performance on behalf of the city to enter into an agreement, including a non-disclosure agreement with Mobility Impact Partners LP to engage in strategic market and technical dialogue about mobility and energy concerns.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing
Mr.
none-
Chair, sorry, I have one question. Sorry, my phone is not working properly. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Councilman.
Sorry, I just have one question on this bill about the non-disclosure agreement. Is it typical that we would do an NDA as like a private sort of company wants this information from us? And maybe that's just a question for the department to get back to us with, but I didn't know that we did that kind of agreement, sort of like we're kind of the middleman for this private company, and I wasn't sure what we get back at the end of this. So if somebody could just get me that info, like, are they going to share their findings? Are we working on a project with them after the fact? Or I just don't want them to use all of, our city streets and everything, and we don't have a bottom line at the end of it. So it's kind of my only question.
Would you like me to respond?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. O'Connor. This is Heidi Norman. So the Mobility Impact Partners is partnering together with a number of different cities, and the participation that we in INP and the Department of Mobility and Infrastructure will have is in discussion work groups talking about the issues that we are experiencing as cities in the mobility and energy space. The NDA is to ask that cities not share information that they may learn about how Mobility Impact Partners is investing in up and coming technology organizations. I think that is to protect the integrity of their financial commitments to those companies. We will not, however, be sharing any data, whether it is directly from our GIS system or anything else. These are merely discussion work groups where we are learning a little bit more about what other cities are experiencing. And from MIP, my understanding is we will gain insights into cutting edge technologies that are trying to address these sorts of issues that we're discussing.
But basically, it's a working group with other cities. It's a general discussion. We're not going to share any of our data with them, and they're not going to share any with us. And it's just a general roundtable discussion with this private entity who's going to hear from all of these other cities and then develop a plan that we might be able to get their technology?
I think everything was correct up to the very last. My understanding is that they are listening to what cities are experiencing in terms of issues, and that will help to inform them as an investment organization into which companies they choose to invest in. I think Director Ricks was on.
I understand it. It just seems a little interesting that we're kind of, and again, other cities are doing it, so I don't have an issue, and maybe I'll just abstain and take this offline. It just seems weird that, you know, we're talking to a company so that they can promote their business in a way that just seems a little different than what we would usually do. And that's why that bill just struck me a little differently. So I'll just abstain today, and then I can talk to Councilwoman Strasburger or the administration after, but that just came off a little surprising that we would be willing to do something like that for an individual private company. I guess that's how I kind of get it. But we'll carry this.
Thank you, Councilman O'Connor. Is there any other members with questions? Councilwoman Gross.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I would like a little more clarification there as well. So it's what you just said, Ms. Norman, is that so then Mobility Impact Partners LP, that the outcome here is that they'll have like inside information on which companies to invest in. That just doesn't sound right. Why would we do that?
So my understanding from this is that we in the Department of Mobility and Infrastructure feel that gaining insight into companies that are investing in technology to help solve issues that cities are experiencing is something that we would really like to know what's coming down the road. Mobility Impact Partners is interested because their primary business is to invest in companies which are going to produce technology that is needed.
Well, I'm interested in it, and I'm sure my next door neighbor is interested in it, and I'm sure the citizens of the city of Pittsburgh are interested in it. And because we're a public body, they should be public information. I don't understand that these private conversations that we're never to disclose. If we vote yes today, we are agreeing to allow the mayor to enter into a non-disclosure agreement. So nobody will ever know what's said. And why? Why? Maybe Director Ricks, I'll give you a chance to help us understand.
Sure. So Mobility Impact Partners is similar to Energy Impact Partners, if anyone is familiar with that organization. They are a collection of investors. So Councilperson Gross, if you did want to invest in what they discovered, you—
Not what I said. I said I'd be interested in what they had to say, but thank you for
but they really are there as more of a vetting entity for investors. And so that what we would be the non-disclosure is with regard to information that we would receive about potential companies that are out there in the world. So there are a number of other cities that are participating in this, as we said, where we can get together in working groups, learn about what is coming down the pike. For example, had we maybe known about Uber and Lyft at the time that those were just percolating through the world, these companies perhaps could have been introduced early on. We, as representatives of the public interest of what cities, we think we've got a strong value statement, a strong understanding of what's good for urban environments, what's not good for urban environments, that we would be able to provide that feedback back, that this would be detrimental to a public environment, that this might exacerbate inequities, that this actually might have these unintended consequences, that you might not consider. This would be welcome, this would not be welcome in urban environments.
Yeah, but that discussion should exist in the public, at the public table.
Perhaps, but generally those kinds of companies are not going to be, coming out onto the public table. It's a highly, competitive environment. So we have the opportunity both to learn. So what we get back as a city is to learn what we might be subject to that might be popping up unbeknownst to us, and maybe have a tiny bit of a heads up on our own. But also we have the opportunity to steer toward the public good via, information that we might provide to a body of investment advisors, what might be more productive from a social equity, from an urban environment kind of standpoint. So we were invited to be one of, I think it's 4 cities that they've invited to kind of be part of this technical body of advisors. I'm certainly.
That was my next question. What are the other cities?
I will get that to you because I'm afraid that I will speak incorrectly at this time. Boston is one, and we'll have to get the others.
I believe another one is Phoenix.
Say that again, Heidi?
I believe another one is Phoenix.
Yeah, we'll get you the list. Sorry.
I just am not seeing the upside that compensates for my discomfort with this. It's you, Director Ricks, you mentioned energy impact partners that we might be, do we work with them? Did this body give them a non-disclosure agreement? Are we doing something in the energy sector like this?
I don't believe so. The energy impact partners, though, were ones that were really leading in the renewable energy space and figuring out kind of how, what were the investments that could be made that would really promote renewable and energy efficiency innovations. I only mention that because Energy Impact Partners has been operating for the last decade or so, and so has a bit of a track record in what they were able to accomplish.
Well, they may be an effective investment, I guess, in equity. Are these like private equity? If it's an LLC?
It's an LLP, yeah.
Limited liability partnership as opposed to limited liability corporation. And I don't know if they consider themselves a private equity company or not. And so while I understand that this is like a, it sounds like a private equity firm that is investing in mobility rather than energy. That's really not the issue here. The issue, well, I guess it's maybe part of it. They're definitely a for-profit group of people who will benefit from their investments. And so I just don't understand. I don't, even though I understand your reference to like, well, it would have been nice if we'd known Uber and Lyft existed as a technology ahead of time before they got to Pittsburgh. I actually probably follow the intelligent transportation sector more than other members. Full disclosure, my husband chairs a center on intelligent transportation at CMU. I just don't know why the city of Pittsburgh, the city council would grant the mayor the authority to enter into this discussion with the non-disclosure agreement and how that's benefiting our citizens so significantly that we're all okay with just kind of giving a private equity company information with a non-disclosure agreement. It just all seems very weird to me. So I guess that's all I can articulate right now, Mr. Chair. But directors, if you want to respond to that before I give up the floor, feel free, because I'm still just kind of, I feel like I'm missing something here.
Right. So again, the only information that we're giving is feedback from the perspective of a municipality. But
it's obviously sensitive enough that every city is signing a non-disclosure agreement.
What is
or it's beneficial enough to this private equity firm. Why can't we just share the information amongst ourselves as a
sensitive is
city?
the proprietary corporate information that would be presented to us to respond to, not so much what we would be saying.
I guess I don't have a further question. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Other members for discussion? Seeing none, we have a motion to approve on the table. All those in favor say aye.
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 I'm going to abstain today just for a further conversation with the director. That's all.
I'll abstain as well. Thank you.
That's
I'm
all.
going to
Thank you.
abstain too.
None opposed. 3 abstentions from Councilman Kraus, Councilwoman Gross, and Councilwoman Smith, correct?
Yes, please.
All
And
right.
Mr. Chair, as long as the director's on here, if she could just be made aware that we'd just like to have a little bit further conversation before we take the final vote. Thank you.
Will do. That does to give us an affirmative recommendation. So the bill is recommended. Bill 908.
Bill 908, resolution amending resolution 840 of 2015 entitled "A Resolution Authorizing the Mayor and Director of Parks to enter into an agreement with Apply for Technology LLC in order to license film and event planning software and to purchase maintenance and solution support services, cost not to exceed $31,405 in order to clarify the start date of the contract as the implementation date of the services rather than the commencement date of the contract and reflect changes to funding sources."
Motion to approve, brief discussion.
Second.
Discussion, Councilwoman Strasburger.
So this is going to cover, this is going to fall under our public safety department, and this is going to cover extending the contract for 1 year. I just wanted to bring it up because it seems like there have been a couple of questions from the members in this committee, just in case there were additional questions for this bill. I don't have any questions, but other members do.
Thank you. Any discussion from other members? Councilwoman Gross.
Full of questions today. This is definitely not B3. It says Apply for Technology LLC, but I'm just going to ask, since it's a police technology budget, because we had several bills in front of council come through in the last couple of years where the title of the bill didn't reveal that it was B3 Solutions.
This is not B3.
Just for clarification.
This is for scheduling under the special events office for to assist with, sorry, I'm toggling back and forth between a couple of different things. To assist with, I believe, film. I think it's very specific to film locations.
So I
mean, that's in the it's in the description of it, but it is not police related. It is public safety only to the extent that it is related to our special events.
Okay, that's all I really wanted to know. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion from other members? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Bill is recommended. That takes us to Intergovernmental Affairs Committee, chaired by Councilwoman Gross. We have a number 2 deferred papers, Bill 793.
Bill 793, resolution adopting plan revisions of the City of Pittsburgh's official sewer facilities plan for the 3173, 3719, 3721 Butler Street.
Motion to approve with discussion.
Second.
Second.
So I'm going to ask for a vote on this one today, even though we're actually not specifically clear from the planning department if it's at the right stage of its approvals. But in the instance, it's not, it's kind of a medium-sized development, but we're going to allow it to move through today. But I just want members to indulge me if we get better information from the planner who's on vacation this week. That's different next week. So we'll just keep our eye on it, but I'll support it today.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Bill is recommended. Last bill, Bill 794.
Bill 794, resolution adopting plan revision to the City of Pittsburgh's official sewer facilities plan for the 27th 51st Street renovation project.
Motion to approve discussion.
Second.
Thank you. This one has been basically tabled by the developer. It's on hold. So rather than letting it kind of limp along, motion to table, and then whenever the project, if the project starts up again, then we'll bring it back. So motion to table.
There's a second?
Second.
Could we have a roll call vote?
Reverend Burgess. Mr. Coghill.
Aye.
Ms. Gross.
Aye.
Mr. Kraus. Mr. O'Connor. Mrs. Cal Smith.
Aye.
Ms. Strasburger.
Aye.
Mr. Wilson.
Aye.
Mr. Lavelle Chair.
Aye.
6 ayes.
I couldn't get my mute off. I'll vote aye on the table.
Aye 7, bill is tabled.
Thank you very much. That does exhaust our agenda for today. We do have a few meeting announcements. Budget hearings will continue Tuesday, November 24th with the Pittsburgh Housing Authority, Pittsburgh Parking Authority, Sports and Exhibition Authorities / Stadium Authority at 10 a.m., which will be chaired by Councilwoman Gross. And then we will have the Pittsburgh Water and Sewer Authority and the Allegheny Sanitary Authority at 1:30 p.m., which will also be chaired by Councilwoman Gross. All budget hearings will be held virtually and streamed live via the city channel via the Pittsburgh City channel on YouTube. Council will also hold a briefing on Wednesday, November 25th with 2 sessions at 2 p.m. and 2:30 p.m. with IMP relative to the briefing on recent Pittsburgh Net RFP. If you would like to register to speak at the regular and standing committees meetings, please call the city clerk's office at 412-255-2138 by 9 a.m. Tuesday for the regular meeting and by 9 a.m. Wednesday for the standing committees meeting. You may also email your comments to cityclerksoffice@pittsburghpa.gov. That is it for my announcements. Is there anything from members? Seeing none, we need a motion to, were all members here today? Yes, need a motion to approve the minutes and adjourn the meeting.
So
moved.
moved. Second.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
We are adjourned. Have a